Hello, book lovers. I'm Peg, the book prize addict, back with more talk about the long-listed books on the 2019 Booker list, long list. Little bad news in that department. I was hoping to be able to read all 13 of them before the shortlist is announced on October 3rd, but I'm not going to be able to get a hold of 5 or 6 of them that haven't been published yet. Usually, I knew this at the start, usually when this happens, it happens because the Booker considers books that will be published up until the end of September for the year it's going on, and it often happens that they aren't published yet when the long list comes out. But usually something happens and they're moved up in the publishing line and put out ahead of time so people can read them. And that doesn't seem to be happening for, as I said, 4 or 5 of the ones I'm really looking forward to reading, and I'm not going to be able to get a hold of them before the shortlist comes out. But whatever, I'll read what I can and continue with my rating plan, which I've explained it below, and I've started making an overall list as I read, so you can see the sequential of the ones I've read and where they stand in my favorites. So without further ado, let's go ahead, and I have 3 to talk about that I finished this week. The first one, and I'm starting at the least, with the least points and going to the most, though all of them, I have to say, certainly deserve to be on the long list. There's no really bad ones this year. First I've got My Sister, the Serial Killer. This is a real unusual book. I'm sure you've heard lots about it, so I won't go into detail. Though it's done with some, I would say, black humor, it actually does involve a young woman who has a sister who turns out may be killing people. I won't go more into it. I mean, you know that much from the start. But I think there's a lot about dynamics, family dynamics, and sister dynamics, and what would you do to protect a sister. Now, the problem is I don't have a sister, and I cannot relate at all about how she feels about her sister or some of their background. I do see there's a lot of psychological angst going on there between the sisters. But again, I think it's very well done for what it does, and probably appeals to people who actually have sisters, can relate to this much more than I can. Okay, the next I have An Orchestra of Minorities. This is the first actually African novel I've read. I know there's quite a few that have been published this year, and I was really impressed, actually. The story is about a chicken farmer in Nigeria that has some adventures, I'll say that. I thought it was really interesting to read of his adventures. They may be a little fantasized and tall tale-ish, but it was very interesting, and he got to travel around quite a bit in this. The thing I really liked best about it is evidently in their culture, they believe in a guardian spirit that lives in you, and this is his spirit talks is part of the explanation of what's going on, and the narration. Actually, he's the main narrator, is the guardian spirit. They're called Ki or Chi. Anyway, tells a story, and it's great. The spirit talks about other people whose bodies he's lived in, how they handle the same sort of situation. I mean, he really has an overview of this in the character. And I did read some of the things that happened, unfortunate things that happened to him in this book. The author knew someone or lived through, so it's very realistically done. And it makes me want to read some more books about Africa that have been coming up recently. I actually have some on my TBR pile. So this is, I think, maybe have a chance of making the short list. We'll see. Okay, and last of my Booker books that I read this week is Lost Children Archive. I read this previously and loved it. I actually gave it 5 stars the first time I read it. Just so you can see what I rated on below, but I just really enjoyed this story told by a young woman with a husband and 2 children. They leave New York, they go on a road trip. I love the scenario of a road trip. They're able to put the characters in kind of a sequestered position, and you can really have some good characterization when people are on a road trip. And it has some themes of listening. They are into sound and hearing sounds, and they're filmmakers, and it gave me some thoughts to think about that. Anyway, so the first part is real slow, kind of slow through their long car trip to the Southwest, where they're kind of picking up and moving to. I think I'd be a little bit nervous about that, but anyway, you get to know the people really a lot, and then the second half picks up with more action and more portrayal of the landscape and that. And all in all, I just super enjoyed reading this, so I gave it a pretty high rating. Okay, I'm going to talk about a book that isn't on the Booker long list, but certainly should be, or other list, called Insurreto. This came out in the U.S. Quite a while ago, and it's just recently come out in the UK with the Fitzcarraldo publishers, which are those beautiful blue editions that they're known for picking the most literary of fiction in publishing. But I like mine because I like the cover. It's a painting, a Filipino painting. Now, I will say this takes place in the Philippines, and because I lived there, I lived in Manila for several years. I actually have a collection of books that take place in the Philippines because it's such a different cultural feeling there that I just love reliving it through books. How can I explain it? It's, of course, in Asia, or near Asia, but it's more, the culture has more taken from the Spanish, and, well, there's some Oriental type feelings or in the culture, and they also, because of the American colonialism, they take popular culture things from, I'll say, 1960s and 70s America, like they're still naming things after Elvis Presley and Michael Jackson, and that comes forward in this book. Okay, now, I think this book should be on what's called the Goldsmiths Prize, which I follow, and that's books that are done in a unusual, unconventional manner in their structure, and this one especially in the structure. Without being too specific, I'll say there's 3 different time frames. One is in 1901, when there was a massacre of Filipinos by American soldiers, and the next time frame is in the 1970s, when a film director goes to this place where it happened and makes a film about it, or tries to. And then the third one takes place in contemporary time, where the daughter of the filmmaker comes back to Manila and hopes and plans to go to the site where all this happened and make her own film, and she's writing it. Okay, so there's all the different time frames. Then she hires a translator, a Filipino woman who lives in New York, but is actually returned to Manila for a visit. And so the 2 women are the main characters, and each of them, this is really crazy, but trust me, it works out. Each of them is also writing a screen, a film on what all the times, the different times of the 1900s as they go on a road trip down south, and that's really great. It's, again, the countryside of the Philippines is something that's just really unusual, and I just could feel being there, having been there myself, the caves that they find, the bats in the caves, just all the different things. Okay, it's just too hard to explain, and it definitely is going to take me 2 readings to figure out all the different time jumps and place jumps and everything. But this is maybe my book of the year. It's certainly my book so far. So, okay, I'll be back more next week with hopefully more of the Booker Prize that I've read. Thanks. Bye.